የማይፈተው መልስ የማይመልሰው የሌለው ማርከሻ
So how can we balance immersion and establishing good and working relation?
Okay.
How can we prevent immersion?
How can we prevent it? Maybe you can tell me what you mean by immersion, because for me immersion's very good. So it sounds like it's an issue for you.
Yeah.
So what do you mean? What do you mean by immersion? Yeah.
For me, immersion is just getting too much into the lives of the subject and getting in depth with the culture, norms, and other. In other words, ignoring that we are just a researcher. It's a state of ignoring our objective.
Do you have examples of when that has happened? Because it does happen. Yeah.
For example, there was an anthropologist, German anthropologist. She was from Germany.
Right.
And she was
So the German anthropologist, what did she do? I can imagine what she did. I think I know what you're going to say, but go ahead.
She had a plan to study one ethnic group in Ethiopia, and she came from Germany and she started to study or work with that community. She established a rapport and all important and necessary issues to conduct her study. But finally, she never back to her university. She married a local tribesman, and she is still living in that tribe in Ethiopia.
Is she happy?
I'm not sure. But she said she was saying that she is really happy.
Okay. You just don't want that happen to you. To me, I'm glad. Good for her. You know, she found a home. Right?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's not what we want to have happen. And I wouldn't recommend it necessarily, but good for her. I mean, if they like her, she likes them. She's not an academic anymore. You know, she found her life's meaning. I hope, you know, I hope she's...
There might be some dangerous stuff. For example, issues related with drug.
Oh. No, in general, it's very, very important to keep the boundaries.
Yeah, that's my point.
Yes, that's the point too. You know, I can't really comment on her, really. I mean, I'm kind of joking, but I'm really not, you know, because at this point in my life, it's like, geez, if you find something that makes you happy, boy, I'm so glad for you. But in general, it's very similar to practice. We have to be super aware that we're researchers, just the way when we're working with people, we have to be super aware that we're social workers. We're not their friends, we're not their fathers, we're not their mothers, we're not their brothers, we're not their cousins or their uncles or the elders. We're social workers. And that has to be very, very clear. And the same is true, we're researchers, we're human beings, we like you. We like being with you, we like learning about you, we respect you, but we're still researchers. And you don't have to say that, but you have to know that in yourself. And that's kind of what you could say integrity, and integrity means like wholeness. There's a sense of wholeness, and there's a sense of dignity that you have, that you bring with you because you know your role. And so people can sense that, and they trust your steadiness. They trust this is a person, they don't think this, but on some level they know it. They know they can trust you because you feel steady. You feel like you've got some wholeness to you. some good health, some good sense of boundaries, some self-respect. So that's A. That's really, really important. That you know who you are and what your job is here. But the second part is, and this is the part that's a little bit controversial, but it's not controversial for me as a social worker. You know, people really worry about, some people worry that we have to be researchers only and we can't be advocates. And I don't see how we can be social work researchers without being advocates. Okay, but the point is, first you're a researcher, and you do your research as best you can with as much integrity as you can.
Yeah.
And then you can advocate. You can't mess around with your research to make it fit what you want to advocate for. So it's really important to do all the things you're supposed to do, get all the multiple points of view, see how people view whatever is the subject of your research, and get that all clear in your mind and write it up and be very respectful of what they say. You're going to do your own separate analysis once you get a clear idea of what other people are saying. And then step 3 is the advocacy. So it's boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. I'm a researcher. My job is to understand you and your situation, and there are very many variations in your situation. I'm going to write this all up. I'm going to represent you as well as I can. I'm going to put the best possible interpretation on this so that other people understand what's going on for you in your region. I'm going to make recommendations for policy, for programs, for education, or whatever. And if need be, I'm going to go testify at the Capitol for legislation. But these are all separate things. Our research itself has to have integrity. We have to have integrity. But we must be advocates. We can't, how can we go in and learn about, say, kids whose parents can't feed them? You know, and not advocate for them? How can we say, gee, I'm sorry you don't have enough food, and then just walk away? You know, we have to do something. We have to at least make recommendations. I've testified a lot. I've gone before a lot of different committees because, but I did my research correctly before I did that. I didn't go up there to say, you know, lock them up or whatever. I went up there to say, this is what I learned, and this is what I recommend. Of course, they didn't pay attention to me a lot of the time, but at least I felt like I had integrity. I don't know, does that answer your question, Hermes? Oh God. Yeah. It's a really, really, really good question. And there's a really nice book. I can't remember the name of the author right now, but it's called Research That Breaks Your Heart. It's Ruth Behar, Behar, Research That Breaks Your Heart. And she talks about how, yes, when we listen to some of these stories and when we see how people are living, our hearts are going to be broken. But that doesn't mean we have to marry somebody, you know, who's part of that group. And it doesn't mean, you know, that we live our lives trying to make things better by being part of that community. It means, yes, our hearts are broken. And yes, I'm going to do this research, and yes, I'm going to make recommendations, and yes, I'm going to testify if I can, and maybe demonstrate on the street. Is there something wrong with your hair, Ajanu?
I don't know.
Yeah, your scarf. You have a scarf on.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is some
A smell?
No.
No, cover your nose then. I want you to be comfortable. Okay. Yeah, sorry. Okay, that's a great question, and books upon books upon books have been written about that. But that's what I've concluded. When I did research in prisons for 17 years, one of the women who worked there as a therapist had an affair with one of the prisoners who had killed a cop. Now, if you can imagine how stupid that is, to have a relationship with a man who killed a cop, because that's a correctional setting. Most of the people that they're surrounded by, they're not cops, but they're prison guards. And so they identify with cops.
Yeah, of course.
So it was serious if she had an affair with anybody, but you had an affair with somebody who killed a cop? She was out like in a New York Minute. She was like, out. She was gone. She was fired instantly. She couldn't even come back to get her stuff. They packed up her office and brought it to her.
Wow.
Yeah, but so that's an example of she got immersed to the point where she was, having this love affair. So you don't do that. You just don't do that.
Yeah.
And, from my impression of you, I don't see any danger. Of your having problem with getting overly involved. There's a really fine balance there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also when I was in the prison, the captain of the guards used to have me. He used to interview me every year or so, just to make sure that I wasn't being sucked in by anybody. Because he knows how manipulative a lot of these guys are, and some of them are really bright and handsome and attractive and really, really something. And so I didn't mind that he wanted to talk to me, to make sure that nothing funny was going on. I mean, that was his job, and I knew I was safe because, to be involved with somebody, I mean, it's just, my boundaries are really good.
Yeah.
And they have to be. As social workers, we have to train ourselves. Okay, that's great. All right. There's so much more to talk about. Let me give you an example. Is there anything else? If we talk about recruitment and what to do once you have the description, and maybe you can ask questions about what I mean by the description. You might not, but that might not be clear yet. What to do once you have the description?
Yeah.
And I did write a paper about that I can send to you. And some people say, oh, that's so elementary, and then other people say, we never talk about that. So I'm in the camp to say, we never talk about it. And it's really important to understand that description comes first, and then analysis we get the description through an analysis, but there's a different type of analysis you do once you have the description. That's I'd like to go into some detail about that. But recruitment, I know that's been an issue for you, so I wonder if for both of you, or at least you're familiar with the idea that there are problems with recruitment. So I don't know, do you have any questions, thoughts, experiences to share about recruitment?
Yeah. Are we talking about selecting study participants?
Yes. How do you get a sample?
Especially in qualitative research.
That's right.
Most of the time we purposely select our study participants. And in my experience, I will choose my study participants based on their relevant to my course.
Of course.
That's right. To the purpose of my study. But still, as far as my experience is concerned, having or getting the perfect participant for study is very difficult.
Getting what for studies? A perfect sample? Oh.
Yeah, therefore getting the perfect sample for my studies is always a challenge for me for different reasons. Sometimes I thought that certain groups or certain, for example, family can really apply, can really fit my purpose, but when I go through that interview, I would realize that this family or this subject will not or could not render what I'm looking for. Therefore, recruitment or selection of study participant is really a challenge for me.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah, for example, I was engaged in qualitative research. Hello?
I'm here.
Yeah, qualitative research that was aimed at identifying the impact of major infrastructures on the socio-cultural context of these local communities, especially tribal communities. And I selected, me and my colleagues selected some study participants, and we thought that they will give us relevant information or data for our study. But when we actually conduct interviews, the data that was coming from the
Okay. What I heard you say is you have particular research questions. You recruited this family that supposedly had information that was relevant to your research question.
Yeah.
And they actually didn't.
Of course.
Okay. Now, would you have expected them to know about what you were interested in?
That's the problem, I think.
No. Did you expect that they would know?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why did you expect that they would know?
Especially when I look to the objectives of the study.
Right.
I realized that such kind of people could have relevant information that might be used to analyze or to collect data.
So why did you think they would have that information?
In some instances, their parents, for example. Hello?
I'm here.
They were parents, and they were parents in impoverished community, in a community that's highly affected by poverty. Therefore, I had a conception that such kind of people could have an important information concerning my study.
Right. Okay. Now, why didn't they have the information?
This is a very difficult question. Maybe my selection process may have some problems.
No, the reason I'm asking, let me tell you, because the concept that's in my mind is the idea of exceptions and positive case analysis. Like here you have people who should know. Here you have people who are experiencing the very thing that you want to know about, but they're oblivious. Right? They're oblivious. Weren't they? Yeah. They probably didn't even know what you were talking about. To me, you know, within the concept of negative case analysis, that's really important. Because there are people who who are experiencing the thing that is of high concern. And they don't have any concern. So, if you're going to create policy, you're going to have to take into consideration the exceptions. Now, I'm talking in general. I don't have the detail. I could be way off in terms of your particular study. But in general, that's really important. It's really important that people are totally oblivious to the very things that should be causing them agony.
Yeah.
And actually may be causing them agony, but they don't want to deal with it. And so if you have a sizable number of people who can't even deal with the difficulties of their everyday lives, that's very significant. That might be more important than people answering your research question. See, that's, again, I'm speaking in generalities. I don't know the specifics of your research, but in general, when that happens, you say, oh my God, it never occurred to me that people who are suffering this badly can't say that they are. It's like a rape victim. You can go to some rape victims and say, well, how are you doing? Oh, I'm fine. I'm just great. Yeah, everything is just great. And then you wait for detail, and there's no detail. That's the other thing. I imagine these people didn't give you a lot of detail about why things are just fine in their lives. Because when people are digging deep into themselves, if they give you detail. If they don't give you detail, you think either they're not telling me the truth or they can't get to the truth because it hurts too much. So that's also a principle in psychotherapy.
Yeah.
People are getting better when they can start giving you detail. And the same is true when we do research. People who just talk hunky-dory, generalities, they're not digging very deep. But you see, with us as social workers, we can't push them. They might not be able to handle it. If we push them for detail, we can't do that.
Yeah.
We have to respect their autonomy. So again, Ermis, I don't know the details, but I do know that principle.
Yeah, but I have still one question here. Especially in quantitative research, we have been told that data should be collected until data saturation is achieved. Meaning, I remember in my master's class, there was a professor who was telling us about data saturation. And in quantitative research, data should be collected until we stop listening or until new ideas are no longer emerging. Therefore, how can we reconcile with data saturation?
Okay. First of all, it can take 50 years to reach data saturation. Do you have 50 years? Obviously not. Okay. So what I found early in my career, and you're early in your career, what I found is that no, I didn't reach data saturation. I'm reaching it now, but I've been doing this research for 35 years. Okay. So, but what you do find is you find some clear things to talk about. Like one of the things early on that I could talk about was the various roles that sexual abusers of children thought they played in children's lives. Now that was clear. Some of them thought they were lovers, some of them thought they were teachers, some of them thought they were playmates. Some of them were hurting the children because they were mad at the adults who loved the children. So there were all these variations. So I wrote about that. I identified 5 or 6 different roles that perpetrators think they play in the lives of children. Now I said there are probably more roles, but these are the ones that I've identified. And that's the same idea for you. You can say, this is what I've got so far. There's probably a lot more. But right now, I can talk about this. You know, I found families who define poverty this way, and I found families who define poverty this way, and so I found 3 patterns of how families define poverty. Now, there may be more, but I have these 3. And I also have 3 patterns of how they describe, you know, the instances. I think that was your second concept. This is how they describe the instances, and there were 5 patterns, because a couple of the people had more than one. And I found 7 consequences. Now, there could be 10 consequences, there could be 50 consequences. These are the consequences I've come up with so far. So you don't have to reach saturation because you don't have time. You'd be retired by the time you exhausted. No, I'm serious. You would be retired by the time you exhausted that. Children in poverty, that's endless.
Yeah.
But you can identify patterns, and that's all you need to do. As long as you can say there's probably more out there, but this is what's there now. Because that's what we do when we're doing qualitative research of any type, is that we're looking for patterns. And we always know there's more.
Yeah.
There's always more, because it's never concluded. Because for one thing, things change, you know. You could do a study now and then do it again in 10 years, and you'd get a lot of the same things, but there may be new things that people are talking about that they couldn't have talked about 10 years earlier. So we know that, and that's been part of qualitative research for a very long time, that we know that what we present is what we know right now. And there certainly could be more, and we hope there is. And maybe I'll discover what's more, or maybe somebody else will. But we got to start somewhere, and this is what we've got right now.
Okay, yeah. It's clear now.
Good. So recruitment is still an issue. I don't know if it's an issue for you, but in general it is a big issue. Just getting a sample.
Yeah.
Getting a sample is very difficult.
Yeah, it's a big issue for me too.
Yeah, it's a big issue for me. Right now I'm trying to recruit for people who've had adversities and who have had success. And by success I mean, I don't know, they would have to define success. I've got a small sample of people who have had adversities and who did fine in their lives, but I want more new people. This is an old sample that I have, and I just want to test the ideas on a new sample. And it's taking me quite a while. First of all, the Human Subjects Committee, the ethics board here, is giving me a hard time. I said that I wanted to recruit this, and they said, well, your research is on violence. And I said, did you read my proposal? I actually said that. Please read my proposal, because in my proposal I say I want to interview people who overcome adversities and didn't become violent. They hadn't even read my proposal to see that what I wanted to do fit with what they had already approved. So now they're taking 2 months to approve a flyer, and to approve an ad, and to approve my even talking to people who could refer me. So recruitment can be a problem just with the Human Subjects Committee. I still can't believe that they're saying that's not what you're doing your research on, and I've been doing my research on that for 35 years. and they've approved my proposal every 5 years. But so you have bureaucratic things where people really don't read what they approved. Okay, so I have to wait for their approval. But in the meantime, I actually am talking to people, and that takes time. So I think I will get a sample, but it takes a long time. Now, I had no trouble with recruitment in prisons because I was there. The men could see me. They could talk to other men about what it was like to talk to me. And so men would come up to me to say, I'd really like to learn more about the research, or I'd like to be in your research, and I'd say, sure. And so we'd sit and we'd talk, and they'd decide whether or not they wanted to be in the research. I think they saw me as an older woman, a little old lady, who was trustworthy too. And I think they were very happy to have somebody to talk to. Because I can't tell you, I think they told me the truth. They may have left a few things out, but some of the things they told me, you can't even make it up. You can't make it up. So, and there's detail, and there's all the characteristics of somebody telling you the truth of their lives. Yeah. So in some situations, it's very easy to recruit. So for something that you're doing, I think you have to do something that's kind of similar to what happened to me in prisons, I think. I think you have to find agencies, or you have to find somebody who has good contacts with people who are living in poverty. And I assume you're doing that. Is that what you're doing? You're establishing rapport with people who can find people for you.
Yeah. Before that, my proposal should get approved by the department, and I have to get ethical clearance from the department,
right.
And then I will contact my study participants. And in fact, I'm also contacting some agencies who had previous experience on the issue.
Good.
And they're showing me some ways of approaching my study participants.
Right.
And I hope I will contact them once after my proposal gets approved.
Yeah, sometimes. Now, how are you doing? Are you getting anybody?
Yeah.
You are getting people.
Sorry?
You are getting people to interview?
Yeah, but for the purpose of there are some procedures that will be applied by the university before getting into people.
Oh, you haven't done that yet. Yeah.
I have to defend my proposal first.
Right.
Otherwise, it's one of ethical problems.
Right. Okay. So, the first thing that I've learned about recruitment is sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's easy. And what makes it easy is if the people who you're going to interview somehow could get acquainted with you. And one of the other things I did that was very successful is that the agencies let me talk to groups of people. So they said, yeah, we're interested in helping you with your study, and so we will, you can go to a group meeting if there's a group meeting. Lots of times there are group meetings, and you can tell our clients about your research, and you can give them your contact information, and then they can contact you. That has worked very well in some settings. Like I did it at a battered, a shelter for people, for men and women and children who've experienced domestic violence. And so I went to the men's group, I went to the women's group, and I got a lot of women. I didn't get a lot of men, but I got a lot of women. So there may be groups that you can go to, present your research, and say, this is what I'm looking for, and this is what's involved. And I would recommend that in the consent form, you would say you don't have to talk about anything you don't want to talk about. Because I find as soon as you give them permission not to talk, they want to talk. But that's not why you say it. You say it because you really mean it. And that's really reassuring to people. Like, poverty can be really embarrassing. So if you tell people, you don't have to talk about this if you don't want to. You know, if there's anything you don't want to talk about, you don't have to talk about it. And they'll tell you more. But at the same time, if they don't want to talk about it, you can't push them, because you have to respect their autonomy. It's an amazing thing. I call it a non-coercive method of interviewing. So you give them freedom of choice to talk about things.
But especially in Ethiopia, in some instances, especially in some cultures in Ethiopia, unless you get permission from the husband, you can't contact the wife. And this is the challenge. And I remember there was one ethnic group in Ethiopia, and we were assigned to conduct an interview, and no one was willing to work with us.
Right.
And finally, we spent 3 days, 4 days, and we tried to study the community, the entire culture. And one person gave us an information, important information. No one will talk to you unless you communicate with the religious leader of that community. And we went to the religious leader, and we gave some gifts for that religious leader, and he was willing to talk, and he gave us some information. And after that, everyone was happy to work with us.
Wonderful. Some similar things happen in the Hmong community as well. If you have the leaders give the okay, then you get a lot of cooperation. That's great. I love that story.
In some instances, for example, this is also difficult in conducting focus group discussions.
Right.
And in fact, it's our own problem. We have different cultures, different way of thinking, different way of seeing the world. You have to be culturally sensitive, otherwise your research will be worthless.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Or you can talk about the difficulty of doing research in a multicultural context. I mean, that I mean, there'd be some way of maybe using the data to say, you know, these are the challenges, we need to put our heads together to figure out what to do. Because there are social conditions that we really do need to understand. Yeah. That's great. That's great. You're going to go far in life. No, you are. You think really, really well. I'm really thrilled for Ethiopia, and I'm thrilled for you. Okay, that's just wonderful. I mean, it's difficult and it's terrible, but it's wonderful that you can articulate it, that you can see it, that you know it's an issue. And it's a serious issue. You know, you don't want to underestimate how serious that actually is, because you are a social worker, you want to do things to make things better for people, and yet you can't get the data you need in order to develop a policy that you know might be helpful. You know, one of the principles that helps me to think about things is, you know, if I'm trying to get somebody to cooperate, I try to think, well, what's in it for them? What can I offer them? You know, it's like when I give a speech or something, the first thing I ask, besides what's my main point, I have to say to myself, well, why should they even care? What are they going to get out of this? And so again, the idea of paying attention to how people perceive you, along with that idea is the idea of, well, what are they going to get out of it? Why would they want to cooperate with us in the first place? What can we offer them? So, there's no answer. I can't answer that for you in your Ethiopian context, but I do know it's an important question.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
So what will the leaders, get? Yeah.
Especially nowadays, there are many international organizations, international agencies who are working on many ethnic groups in Ethiopia, especially pastoralist areas. There are many pastoralist areas in Ethiopia, rural areas, and these international agencies are following some sort of doing research. For example, they introduce the local community with the idea of giving what we call money to get data. These international agencies are rich and they have the money, and the local community used to get money from those agencies, and when we, especially academicians, went to or go to such communities, they are expecting money.
And you don't have it.
Yeah, and they say that this is the only thing that we get from your research. This is a problem.
It is a problem.
Unless you are paying some amount of money, or unless you give some amount of gifts for the local people. Previously, this was not the culture, to be honest.
I know.